The trust. So, I've got that gut feeling, and it's never been wrong when it counts in my life ever before. However, my exceptionally messed up resume from previous relationships and various infidelities meant that a rather stock standard emotional affair that occurred early in this relationship became the straw that broke the camel's back. Without going into details about the above, what I am trying to say is, there is a fair chance that I am hypervigilant and a little paranoid due to incidences in my past, and that may be causing my normally solid gut instinct to be less dependable than it once was. I'll give you the details and see what other rational people think. So, the emotional affair that occurred back in 4 years ago was comparatively insignificant in the scheme of things when compared to other infidelities and unconventional relationship types that I have dealt with from my first relationship to the last preceding this one. If you can imagine a world where a 6-month emotional affair with a coworker, 350 plus texts a month and all the fun that comes along with denial of that, deleted messages being almost insignificant enough that it would basically not even rate on the red flags or care factor scale, then you might get an idea of how messy my past before that was. However, turns out we all have our breaking point, and for me, the emotional affair was finally it. Like many, I never got the real, independent, solid proof, hard evidence answers about what really occurred, left only with the word of a proven liar who had gone out of her way to cover the tracks and further destroy what remained, faster than, I don't know, something really fast. Also, with the expert ability of a forensic data recovery specialist being her particular skill set. You can imagine the difficulty one would face in attempting to piece any evidence together to fill the blanks. Anyway, long story short, that left me pretty damaged, and my ability to sort paranoia over genuine red flags was severely compromised for quite some time. But I do feel that it has finally made a pretty good recovery in the last 18 months. I stopped snooping. On that note though, if there is one thing that I am incredibly happy to take away from that, it's got to be the amazing skills in hacking and data recovery that I learned through hours and hours and hours of relentlessly learning and applying that. So here we are, 3 years into marriage, first child, 4 months old, living the dream. All that's needed is a white picket fence out front and it's all downhill from there. Welcome to life as a family unit and goodbye living the dream without a care in the world. Now, it might just be that she is making the most of maternity leave, which is fair enough. But my senses are acting up again suddenly. The mobile phone is glued to her 24/7. She takes it everywhere with her and she is constantly messaging someone or flicking through Facebook news feed. Half the problem is simply the inability to go 20 minutes without picking up her phone and fiddling with it, scrolling through complete rubbish like Facebook news feed just out of habit all the time, messaging her friends right now and right then, rather than just wait till the 10 minutes car ride to the shops or whatever is over so we can maybe have a conversation. I have kept a constant check on the phone records for the last 8 weeks. No unknown number showing up regularly enough to warrant anything suspicious. The texts are all to known numbers and calls are not her style. Nothing showing up out of line there though. She has WhatsApp. I've spoofed the MAC address via terminal emulator and run it parallel to her. Nothing. I've pulled the WhatsApp backup databases from her phone and run them through a PC-based program that decrypts them and makes them viewable. No deleted conversations showing and no hidden contacts. I can't see any apps with messaging, chat capability installed in Google Play, and I can't see any major data used by apps unknown that may be hiding a chat messaging function. So, I'm sure most of you at this point would say, yup, sounds like you've lost your marbles. She's not up to anything, but the phone use is excessive, even for her. I can't help but wonder if despite all my wisdom, I am missing something. Does anyone know of any communications apps that are practical enough to communicate regularly and easily yet appear as standard, common apps? Or possibly apps that serve as another purpose, function for 90% of their design, but have a messaging, chat function built in with push messaging? The other thing that has me adding weight to the possibility of there being something going on is the newfound enthusiasm for always having some kind of outing. Mother's group, lunch with friends, need to go for a walk around the shops, or general engagement, basically every day. By all means, she's free to enjoy her life. I aren't saying that should be restricted, but I am just wondering why a trip up to the local shopping center that is 10 minutes away on a bad traffic day, to go to the post office, takes 1 hour, or why she manages to take 4 walking around the same shops we have been to 100 times, or why she constantly has engagement after engagement with friends, ultimately filling most of the day, leaving the house around 10 to 11 a.m. and coming home at 4:30 p.m. Like I said, I have gone through everything I can think of. I can't find anything amiss, but something doesn't feel right. I accept that I might be overreacting at this point, and I am not continuing any further on the digging and snooping and monitoring mission for now. 2 months later, we've moved on significantly since this happened, obviously, hence why we're still married and getting better and better every day. But I have never forgotten what happened, and like many people who confront too early, I only realized in hindsight, too late afterwards how much potential evidence I missed and only learned about the possible forensic recovery. Surveillance methods that I wish I had known at the time. I would have my answers, but alas, the solid proof is now well and truly gone, lost to history. So, here's how it went down. I would like to see what everyone's opinion is in regard to whether you think that this was, most likely, in your opinion, an emotional or physical affair. After months of my suspicion, to the point of obsessive searches every time she left the house, starting from the week we moved in together. The affair began pretty much the week before we moved in together, as it turns out, as evidence from phone bill records I have since pulled, to the day I finally found the evidence 6 months later, when I found her recently replaced for upgrading to newer model Galaxy stashed away in the back of her dresser drawer, and finally found the evidence to justify my gut feeling and maniac behavior. Thank God I wasn't really crazy. Although deleted from primary call, text logs, I could still see a mobile phone number that had appeared multiple times in the secondary text logs. So, she had clearly gone through and deleted purposefully this particular number, which was not saved as a contact, just a number, and it was the only contact that had received such a thorough delete treatment. So, it was obvious that there had been at least 1 month, that I could see at this point, of texts from that number that was purposefully deleted. Unfortunately, there was no content of any text messages remaining. So apart from seeing the number of texts, 50 in that viewable last 4 weeks, I had nothing. I called the number, confirmed a male voice with South African accent, and then waited for the missus to return home from the music gig she was out with friends at that night. It was soon to finish and I expected she would be home within 20 to 30 minutes. So, I waited. Shortly though, she calls me to tell me she was going to stay out a little longer, etc., and that's when I gave her the good news that she best come home instead, because we needed to talk. I didn't tell her what the problem or issue was at this point though, as I was at least thinking clearly enough to keep her in the dark about what was in motion until I hit her with the evidence I had just uncovered, rather than risk letting her think up a cover story or contact this boss on her way home, so as to come up with a cover story or other explanation, etc. I just wish that my sense of mind had been a little better than that though. Damn. So, when she arrived home, I went through my confrontation plan, which included a bit of an information hold-back tactic in case the teeth-pulling started. Basically, I had a few questions I was going to ask her, which I already had the answers to, that she would also be fully aware of the answers to herself, very clearly aimed and something she would immediately identify with him. So, this began with the first question asking her if she had any South African friends. When that was denied, the question then became, do you know any guys with a South African accent? She immediately played dumb. No, complete with the stupid look of a person acting as if they are doing their best to try and think who or what I am talking about. So, given that she had chosen to play dumb with the first 2 opportunity questions, I knew I had to step it up. The first 2 questions obviously hinted quite clearly to very specific and significant person that would not be forgotten in the consideration of those answers. They were pretty specific. I was surprised that despite how clearly the answers were aimed at prompting her to provide a specific answer, which I clearly must have already known with further answers in detail, she still chose to deny she had any idea what I was talking about. So, I had to move on to question 3. Do you know whose number this is? And read the number to her, and then wrote it down on paper for her to maybe help jog her memory, and then reminded her that it's a number she has texted many times recently and had done so by manually entering the phone number into the recipient section, given that it wasn't saved as a contact. Still, she had no idea who it could be. Funny enough, I was stunned that she had maintained the play dumb routine this far into my series of questions, despite how obviously clear it was that I had now identified the other man. I was beginning to run out of questions, and of course, known answers. So, I went on with let's call the number and see what happens, which got the admission finally that it was probably someone from work, and from that, I then demanded that she identify exactly who it was, and why they had been communicating using her private number so frequently, if it was indeed a work-related matter. So finally, the most basic truth finally comes out. She admits that it's a guy from work and they were just friends, blah blah. And I think at that point, I asked her why she had deleted the messages and made it clear that we were now dealing with this as I've finally caught you out. I ducking knew it. You cheating woman, now explain yourself from here on in. Well, the whole thing was somehow quickly summed up and finished off with a nice little sugar coating, which I took hook, line, and sinker at the time. Her answer for the text messages and their deletion. I deleted the messages 'cause you are so paranoid and I didn't want you to think the wrong thing. Essentially saying, so I just decided to hide my intense level of communication with a friend because despite that you have otherwise been perfectly accepting of the fact that I have 4 to 5 very good male friends that you have never had a problem with before, I just decided from the very beginning that you would have lost your crap for no reason over my friendship with this particular guy, and that's why I kept my communication with him secret. which I promptly swallowed like a gullible sucker. It turns out the little breakup we had for 5 days in July 15th was in the middle of their most intense period of communication, which I now see as textbook events timeline for a developing affair relationship that basically turns the WS against the BS. And had I asked her back then when this happened, in a very calm and diplomatic way, whether there was someone else involved, and I asked this a number of times, I would ask in a calm, rational manner and reiterated that I wasn't accusing, just asking, and that I was doing so and communicating honestly with her like should be done in a relationship. I also gave the opportunity to just lay it out on the table if that was the case, and made it pretty clear that I would prefer that she just give me the bad news, so at least I would then be able to put some logic and reason to why this out of the blue split had happened, and I would cut my losses and walk away. Rather than go through the drama of pointlessly trying to fix things, I would have at least then had a reason to accept for our relationship's sudden demise, and possibly just let it go, rather than continue to think I was losing my mind and that I was a paranoid, insecure, terrible partner. She was adamant that she and I were over by the Sunday night the week this happened. The split happened Wed night, and I went to stay with mates for a few days to allow her to think and consider if she did still love me. Another familiar theme you all no doubt know. But events over the weekend, I caught her out lying about the fact she was with a male sat night cause her phone pocket dialed me as they were driving. In the cover story that was in turn supported by 2 of her toxic to our relationship. I hates them, they hated me from day one. Friends had me living in blissful denial about the incident and choosing to just accept her story and be happy that I finally came to my senses and came home to insist that we try and sort things out. Which after much groveling and patheticness on my part, she eventually promised to give her all and effort towards also. Well, phone records show that not only was there indeed someone else in the picture at the time of that July split, but they also didn't miss a single beat in their communications pattern after this defining moment. And text records show that there was in fact slightly more than 550 sent by her in the following half of July and all of August. June, July, same time frame was about 500 texts. So clearly, she hadn't even attempted to break it off at this point. They worked in the same office, so saw each other daily, where they would have lunch and coffee together, sometimes several times a day. And when working at their separate desks, would make do with office communicator chat, like Facebook chat, live, open real-time chat program that runs via Exchange, Outlook basically. And of course email and work mobile phones, over the entire time, aside from the office. Workplace communications, which I can't see as the chat logs were deleted as were emails. Then the Exchange backups requested for deletion citing full data file. Housekeeping needs as her reason to the admins. There was about 750 to 800 texts sent by her to him. And apparently he sent her many more than she replied to, she says. Plus her work phone. She admits there was also texts that, but again I couldn't see any details due to my haste and the fact it's a work account which I can't access records of. Plus words with friends that, unbeknownst to me at the time, was not being played obsessively due to her love of Scrabble. Rather, it was the love of its covert message system and its perfect pass-off if I asked who she was messaging with no one, playing Scrabble. As she would flash the phone toward me and show me a Scrabble game in action. But, so angry at the betrayal of things like that. But moving on, what I would like to hear from you guys is, given the above details, the volume and ease of access to communication and in-person face-to-face time they had in this timeline, and the things like complete deletion of all message email content and history, which to me says you deleted it because it was of a highly inappropriate nature. Cause there is no reason to delete innocent friendly banter, no matter how much volume, and no one else's messages were deleted, so it wasn't a case of running out of space on your laptop, phone. Plus a few other significant incidents that show development of the relationship to a point where it reached that point of her being in the fog so deep that our relationship did the textbook breakdown with textbook script. I aren't sure how I feel anymore. Still love you line. Am I right to call a firm bull crap on her story that they were just good friends? They might have sent a few flirty messages sometimes. He had a pet name for her and they would send winks or little remarks, but nothing over the top, and certainly nothing was ever discussed. They never did anything. Nothing, nada. Simply good friends who messaged each other first thing in the morning and last thing before they closed their eyes. And all day at work despite working at the same offices and often the same building. This friendship required 700 to 800 text messages in between, using Communicator Messenger on their desktops during work hours every day and in the out-of-work hours, who had pet names for each other, and that is all. She has consistently maintained this claim of friendship and no more, without any further admissions since the confrontation in November. She maintains that it is the honest truth and has stuck firmly to her story, which has more holes than a fishing net. A common line if I ever raise question or doubt with her from time to time is, I've told you everything. I don't know why I deleted the only evidence which could exonerate me, and I am not going to just tell you something happened when it didn't to appease you. Nothing happened, get over it. That's basically the loop things have been stuck on ever since. OM was a coworker. Things cooled down significantly prior to my discovery when he got a job with another company. But what I didn't know, and only found out mid-last year in fact, was the building, offices, new company he started working for were just next door to where he and my fiancée wife worked. So aside from not working together directly, they were in reality no further away from each other than before. Both buildings shared the same coffee shop, same shops and takeaway food outlets, etc. basically. They work for major IT companies, and they all have their head offices in this technology park, which is a little self-contained community. I of course have no way of knowing if the no contact, set the very night I found out, was adhered to truthfully or not. She claims she hasn't spoken to him since about 10 to 15 days prior to me finding out that night, when the phone records show them messaging for the last time. But it is impossible for me to know whether they have used any of their work resources like Office Communicator, Instant Messenger, or even email to do so, deleting the logs immediately after, which I had no real ability to recover anyway, because I can't go messing around with her work laptop, etc. Significant security issues would be caused by doing that possibly, and yay, just a no-go zone. The lack of telling me that he was actually working in such close proximity still has crossed my thoughts as well. 2 months later, I discovered they were using the messaging part in Gmail. I couldn't see all the convo, but I saw the part where she said, "I miss you." I can't believe my wife said that to another man. It is such an unbelievable feeling. The person you sleep with does such a thing. I am heartbroken as I type this, but at the same time I'm researching what's the best method to divorce in this state. I took work off tomorrow and booked an appointment with a divorce attorney. Hope everything goes well. 5 months later. I didn't want to put my life up here, but I figured someone might learn from my story. Basically, I served her at her workplace. She was completely shocked I did that. I mean, I didn't feel much happiness or sadness from doing it, but I thought it will send a message to the other man that affairs do destroy marriages. It'll take a couple more months before the marriage finalized, but she is getting out of the house and I will be just spending my own time watching Netflix and chilling for now. I guess I'll take small steps to recovery, but I think I will get there. Story 2. I don't know where to begin, but to people that don't know my wife and I, well, we look like a typical family. We have the 2 most beautiful young children who I absolutely adore and devote my life to. We are both professionals. I'm in finance, my wife is a doctor, and have a nice, modest house in the suburbs. We have another baby on the way, December. We are young, mid-30s, and have been with each other for 14 years. My wife was still at college when we met. Married for 8 years. We have financial pressures due to the fall in property values, but these are surmountable, and my career, if not great, progresses slowly every year, and I am finally, after a long slog, earning a good salary. Unfortunately, the opposite has happened. My wife, as she has had to juggle motherhood and career and has seen her own business suffer in the downturn, quite markedly. So far so typical. These are all things most couples can deal with. However, scratch the surface and a very different picture emerges. We have major fundamental problems with our marriage, and I believe we both have issues to deal with that predate our ever meeting. I believe, and I may be wrong, that my wife's problems are more significant and more damaging to our marriage. These are not new issues and in truth have been there since before we married. We have either denied or ignored, or I have accepted things I did not really believe in. To compound these matters, I have recently lost my twin brother, fraternal, to cancer at a young age and seen him leave a wife and 2 babies behind. Unfortunately, my relationship with him, and with my younger brother and parents, had deteriorated hugely in recent years and were at a very low ebb when he was diagnosed 12 months ago. He had a positive prognosis, but the treatment didn't work, and he passed away 4 months ago. I am still reeling from the loss, but also know that I will be okay. We reconciled straight away after the diagnosis, but I will always be so guilty. While it wasn't the greatest twin-brother relationship in the world, it was still a good one. However, it went bad in recent years, and while the fault is ultimately mine, so much was because I did what my wife wanted and chose conflict with my brothers and parents rather than with her. Even or especially when I did not agree with her, I created and fed the monster and didn't have the spine to face up to it. My weakness. My fault, and I am devastated. On top of this, my wife is reasonably consistently physically ex me for the last 6 or 7 years. It would have started a few years before that, and has been especially acute in the last 12 months. I have never physically ex her, but have had to physically stop her on countless occasions. I am an athletic 6 feet 2, 200 pounds man, but I still have suffered bruises, cuts, scrapes on many occasions. I have never said or written these words. My wife has spoken to her mother about it, and it goes for a few months. The other thing that she has done to me on very frequent basis is kick me out of the house. probably for last 6 or 7 years. I am expelled for a few nights and allowed come back, but only if my tail is between my legs, and so this is what I do. I always rationalize that I'm doing it for the children, but I always apologize and go back to the spare room where I have spent most of our married life. Yes, I'm serious. This is all very weird writing these things. I don't know who's reading. And you probably think that I am making this up, or that I have done some monstrous things, or there's some dark secret. But I am not so interesting. The main reason of my wife's frustrations has been her relationship with her in-laws. That is my parents, my 2 brothers, my twin, and their wives. She also has quite an up and down relationship with her 2 siblings and her parents and her friends, which unfortunately are now few enough. She uses negative hyperbolic language about people all the time. X hates me. X is evil, and I usually say, hey, they are just trying to struggle through life like the rest of us, or I try and agree with her and then give a caveat how her interpretation is maybe slightly extreme, but this then provokes a reaction that I never support her. I think she has made people fear and dislike her because of these reactions, and it's a vicious circle. Where I know where I am at fault is that I have not ever really challenged her. I once broke up with her, a few weeks after going to work with marks on my face for the first time, 11 years ago. But didn't say it was connected. Instead, I said I just wanted a break because I was young, etc. Instead, I sensed ours wasn't a good relationship. I could see we were both isolating ourselves from friends, and things like the physical dynamics between us were not good, and the punches were part of a final wake-up call. I have just remembered how 2 police officers came to our apartment that night as my wife had placed an emergency call following her taking a bunch of painkiller that evening, and then I think there had been a noise complaint, so that was why police, not ambulance, came, or we rang the emergency number to cancel the previous one. But anyway, the police, 1 male, 1 female, were asking her these questions: if she was okay, why had she called, was there anything else, and then just as they were leaving, the female police officer looked at me and asked if I was okay. I just sensed she knew. Of course I said I was okay. Anyway, the break lasted about 6 months, and was very difficult for her as we had moved to a new place. And things improved after, but I could see that I had rocked her very badly. But since then, I have almost never fully stood up to her. I have had to swallow my pride on so many occasions, accepted her position on things, and then fought fights with other loved ones and suffered, but still managed to get on with life, do okay at work, have great kids together, keep friendships with old friends, though at a distance. And just been a good soldier, I guess. So why do I post now? I just can't keep doing this. I have been thrown out one again tonight, scrapes on my arms, taken a few punches. The usual. This time my wife is accusing me of further disloyalty to her. I have never proved my loyalty to her. I just don't understand what she means. She believes that my late brother's wife in particular, and the rest of my family too, wants to destroy our marriage by being friendly with me and our kids and isolating her. At times she brings a very ugly lurid dimension to this on the basis that I had kissed my sister-in-law in my much younger and drunker days, years before I met my wife. I also had an early, innocent, short relationship with my sister's-in-law older sister when I was in high school. These are things only my wife thinks about, and there are no unresolved issues in reality. I am trying to help my parents grieve and grieve myself. I believe that everyone trying to get along will help us all, but here I am, opening my heart about my marriage problems, but I know I will never recover if I don't sort this out. I am trying to think of other things to write, in particular things that might shed more light on me. In a bad way especially, but I am a faithful, considerate husband, devoted father, responsible, hardworking, ambitious. But that's gone. I am having a crisis with work too. But I am ignoring that for now. I have never said a bad word to anyone, but myself, about my wife, as I always felt to do so would be too humiliating for me and lead me on a lonely path and just lead to financial ruin. My wife has said for many years that she wants to leave me, and maybe I have driven her mad by always accepting and never giving up on us. For the first 3 months I knew her, she was simply the greatest thing I had ever came across. The absolute and utter knockout love of my life. We had similar humor, tastes, interests, and she was beautiful, and for the first time I felt like I was a man to be envied with this great girl. She actually did great things for me at the start, made me feel good about myself, gave me a bit of ambition, a bit of structure and balance. While I had minor, short bouts of depression in my late teens, early 20s, I have never felt like that since. Maybe I have built coping mechanisms. I don't know. I loved her so much, but maybe we are not right for each other, or maybe it got imbalanced a long time ago and we have never navigated our route back because there was no route. With hindsight, I realize my wife was depressed when I met her and has suffered to a minor degree from depression for some time. I would think it's low grade, but it has impacted her personality to a degree that when she is upset, and she is easily and frequently upset, she loses all sense of reason and proportion and overreacts to everything, not just relating to me. She is a wonderful mother and conscientious doctor, but works too hard, has always done. and exhausts herself. She disagrees this has anything to do with things. Instead, if I was a better husband, she would be fine. She has seen a therapist who said a lot of her issues stemmed from her father's remote parenting. A decent man, somewhat spoiled, who knew no better, and she has periodically used meds, using none at present due to pregnancy. And the meds helped somewhat, but the rage never left. I can never talk to her about these things. She always plays the victim and will turn things around and on to the latest thing that has upset her, or if not that, then something from years ago. I know I have caused her upset, but I have never deliberately done so. I don't know what else to say. I don't know if we are doomed. I don't know if I'm doomed to an unhappy life whatever way I turn. I don't know what to do in terms of the next practical steps I need to take. I would go straight to her parents, except their son, my brother-in-law, is awaiting the arrival of his first child any minute now, so I feel it would be wrong to place a shadow over that. But I do know I need to finish this. Enough is enough. I am worried about how things will develop from here, especially with my two great boys, and the fact my wife is pregnant is just making me feel really guilty and ashamed. I feel so disappointed in myself. I have tolerated this for so long, accepting the unacceptable. I keep thinking things will get better, but they always get worse. Aw man, you have no idea of the dread I have. You start to think that putting up the abuse would be better for all concerned, but I know that there is good in that now. It will just duck everybody up forever. I have always been afraid that she might self-harm, but I can't keep feeling responsible for her. Not after all of this. While there are two sides to every story, and I know she ferociously believes in her version of everything, there are so many things she turns on the head. I don't know why I waited so long. This all got to its most intense and vicious last summer after my brother was diagnosed. She says all that she was doing was supporting me. I don't know if this is typical, but in 14 years, she has never said sorry. Never. I have to apologize for breathing. Deep down, I always felt sympathy for her because I could see that she was damaged. She says that she suffered serious bullying at school. But I can't live like this anymore. I also think that I have facilitated the worst of her behaviors. By never telling her it had to stop, I think she thought it meant nothing to me. She said to me that a psychiatrist told her the violence was something I brought out in her, and that she had to be wary of this and people like me. We saw a marriage counselor for 2 sessions last year. We both seemed to think the counselor was validating our respective positions. My comment: what would you do if you were in OP's position? I'm just providing some lighter stories because of the intense stories I posted recently. If you haven't watched those, check them out on the right side of this video. Sub and bell, and let's keep learning.